discipline that bodybuilding provides.
Yeah, definitely, man. I know you wanted to talk about peaking, right?
As far as for you have some pros under your belt too, right?
Yeah,
As a coach.
so Noah won an overall last year. Philip won an overall. Noah didn't turn pro, but that's because it was an NPC show, you know. So you need to go from regionals to nationals. So yeah, 2 overalls last year. Philip's a pro. I think I might have 2 potential candidates this year, but we'll see. But definitely some heavy hitters going into this year because yes, pro's a title, but I think that they both have pro caliber physiques, which is the most important thing. But yeah,
Sick. Okay, so how about you do first of all, let's have you do, what a linear load is, and then I'll do kind of explain like what the typical back load is, and maybe, talk about the rapid back load and why it's kind of dumb. And then you can do front load, and then we'll talk about, any instances where we haven't, loaded guys and we just walk them right into the show. So yeah, tell them what a linear load is. This is ideally what I do with most of my clients, right? If they're ready early, you have to be ready early for this. So why don't you take it away?
So the reason why you have to be very ready early in advance is because if you're not fat free, you'll have more fluid be potentially shuttle into adipose if you have still more body fat to pull off in certain areas. But it is the most predictable and stress-free, in my opinion, way to load somebody because it's a very predictable kind of linear increase in carbohydrates up. The food will stay relatively stable throughout the week, I like to think, once you find that kind of loading point. I'm sure you've seen with individuals yourself where, you carb them up for the first initial days and you kind of just try to find that tolerance level and you'll start to see like body weight stabilize where you want it to. Because we know that the morning body weight typically is associated with a very similar look, right? Obviously, there's going to be like fluid disbursements like based off of fatigue dropping. Maybe you drop off some diet fatigue after introducing food, but it's very predictable. And all you have to do is pretty much just hold the look with a certain amount of carbohydrates because it's not really going to change too much. If you play it right the last few days going into the show, you drop food volume, then maybe the scale weight might drop, which I think throws a lot of people off because you might think, hey, I've been loading this person on this amount of carbohydrates, this exact amount, and they stabilize in body weight for the entire week and you just hold them there. But suddenly when you drop like protein, veg to keep down food volume, have more space in the stomach for digestibility, they shoot down in weight, but they still look good. So sometimes the scale weight can definitely throw things off, but that's what makes it predictable, just keeping your carbohydrates pretty static once you find that level that loads you properly.
I typically will drive up sodium a little bit too, because what happens is clients are, they all of a sudden, every little variable is locked in for peak week. So they'll stop using some of their sauces, even if you tell them,
no.
Or they'll cut them out themselves, even if you say, hey, keep using your normal sauces. And then their sodium will go down by like a gram maybe. And maybe like you don't even, I don't cut artificial sweeteners or anything like that, but maybe they stop doing pre-workout. Or they stop, any like drinks, any like Gatorade Zeros that had, some electrolytes in them. And then all of a sudden, right, you're just increasing carbs, but then they're not eating enough, or they're not having as much sodium as they were and keeping it consistent. And then they start holding less water. They're a little bit more flat. They might be a little bit sharper, but it just can kind of throw the weight off, right? If you're holding less water weighs a lot. You're going to be lighter. So typically, you'll increase calories in peak week. And especially in the first part, we'll start to see weight go down.
Yeah. I mean, I would usually expect sodium to go up because as you increase food, they usually add more sauces. But, for certain.
And not in a peak week. In a peak week, they're like all like, they have to make everything perfect. They're you know how it is. Everyone cuts out everything, even though I don't know if you do, but I'll just cut like carbonation usually. That's about
just artificial sweeteners and carbonation, anything that can impact your digestibility, because if you don't digest your foods right, you're not going to assimilate the glycogen properly.
So yeah, people will, either use less sodium or more sodium, and it can be a whole little scale play, but you just have to have clients keep things consistent.
Yeah.
And when you tell them that, then they're usually good about it. You just have to sometimes tell them a couple times, man, because they're so like excited about the show, you know, getting the tan, doing all the skin prep, that the little details like sodium can, or sauces and stuff like that can you know, you can run into some issues.
You drop sodium, you increase fluid. That's going to be a case of just depleting, and you definitely don't want that. Yeah, so someone's already flat, you're just going to get flatter like that.
Yeah. Okay, so I will go into what a backload is. So backloading is what a lot of coaches do. It's a typical thing. Like whenever I watch, you know, enhanced guys on YouTube or something like that, you know, carb up for show day, they're always typically doing backloads, and that's like 2 or 3 days out. So, you know, Thursday, Friday, 2 pretty high carb days, right? It is a double high carb day, essentially filling you out. And some coaches will deplete in the beginning of the week and like, you know, pull carbs lowest. Then you have all of prep. And then, you know, they'll say like there's a super physiological like compensation effect with glycogen that you fill out more. There's really no data on that, and that's not proven at all. You know, although like it may, you know, I don't know. You kind of just have to go on a case by case and individual person basis. So you can either deplete and then do those big, like 2 or 3 big refeed days. Or, you know, you're just keeping your normal training day, rest day, right? Cardio's cut. Fatigue is low. You're trying to drop off any systematic inflammation. And then, yeah, you just do basically 2 back-to-back high carb days, Thursday and Friday. And you should, you know, if you have the right data collected, if you're not just like free balling the amount of carbs you're giving them, you're cutting your veggies, you know, you're lowering protein, you're keeping the GI empty. You're using things that digest super easy, right? Rice-based stuff, cream of rice cakes. And ideally you wake up full as a house on Saturday. So that's what a backload is. There's no really rules to it, right? There's also a rapid backload, which is developed by Cliff Wilson, right? Famous bodybuilding coach, natural bodybuilding coach. And that's more he'll like deplete guys at the beginning of the week. Like I'm talking like 0 carb, you know, chicken and veg for every meal, no sodium, tons of water. He'll usually bump fat up, I believe, and just deplete the heck out of you. This is like a lot of old school bodybuilding coaches would do this, right? They just deplete the heck out of you. You're looking the smallest you ever have. And then, you know, maybe food goes back to normal the last 2 days, or, you know, it just keeps depleting. And then that Friday, right? 1 day before the show, it is just, you know, an insane amount of carbs. Think like those 2 high days from the backload, that amount of carbs combined in one. Like you got guys eating like 1,000 grams of carbs in 1 day, using like dirty food to get it all in, typically. Sodium, you know, way higher than normal, boom. And, you know, what they say is that there's this, you know, super physiological compensation effect that you wake up with when it comes to restoring glycogen on Saturday from depleting yourself so much, and then just having that 1 day of an insane carb up on Friday. You know, sometimes, a lot of times with dirty food, right? That's where the burger and fry and a diazide comes with. Yeah. Also, they'll usually run diuretics or natural diuretics with this backload peaking process.
It doesn't
and
make sense at all. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they kind of wake up. You don't know how you're going to wake up on Saturday. So it's like the riskiest, dumbest thing you can do.
That's why the diuretics are there in the first place, because you don't know how you're going to wake up. And it's usually probably spilled luck, especially with all that sodium, because some sodium will bleed over into interstitial space and you're just going to wake up watery.
I know you said you've worked with like 5 coaches now, or 4 or 5 coaches. Did one of them ever carb you up with a burger and fry?
That's actually what I was going to say, man. Yeah. So my first ever prep coach, he did the job. You know, we won the shows, but the package could have definitely been better. But it doesn't make sense, because while we were loading during the backload, fluid was actually tapered off, man. That makes no sense, because you need fluid to assimilate the glycogen, right? It wasn't tapered off fully, just kind of reduced to, let's say I was drinking like 2 gallons during my normal prep process. You would taper it down to like maybe 1.5 during my first loading day. And it just doesn't make sense now that I know how to coach. Right. Oh. So, and then the day after, we did the burgers and fries, the burger and fries, not burgers, sorry, for the extra sodium.
Did he give you like Expel or like the Evogen Super Dry or anything like that?
No. Thankfully, I wasn't on any like natural diuretics or anything like that. So yeah, no.
Okay.
Oh, vodka, dude. Vodka. He gave me
Oh, he had
vodka
to do
at
vodka?
night.
Oh
Yeah, he gave
gosh,
me
no.
vodka at night. But that is like a natural diuretic, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But I think that's more to just like chill you out. Honestly, like I've given
Yeah, I
someone
saw
vodka
AJ.
in the
AJ
past.
has taken that. AJ has ripped vodka before his
Yeah.
shows, but he said it was just to actually help him sleep
Yeah.
because
I've
his
given
mind
people
was so
vodka to
excited.
chill out, especially when you're working with a client that can get a little bit angsty and like nervous. Like
Mhm.
alcohol will help because you need to be super chill to be able to digest the foods properly, right? Like you mentioned the rapid backload, all that food coming in at once. If you're super stressed out, you won't be able to handle a rapid backload. I think Cliff, he knows how to keep his athletes super like chill and composed where they can actually digest the food well. I've heard like from him in podcasts where he, other of his clients have mentioned he's really good at just like being calm and just as a coach, not stressing out the client, which is something you don't want.
If you use the right foods, I could see it going okay. Like I'm immediately my mind goes to like cream of rice,
Yeah.
or super dense like rice cereal, right? Rice Krispie cereal.
Yeah.
If you're using a lot of rice-based stuff and you don't destroy your GI and have too much of a
It's just
like food
difficult,
volume
man.
basically.
It's just difficult to
Uh,
pull off.
but yeah, like, and then there's like no proof of that super physiological compensation effect either. So
Yeah. I think most of it comes from just like anecdotal from coaches, super
mhm.
compensation.
I run a normal backload though with guys, right? Just a number.
Yeah.
Like if I have data on them, right? 3 weeks out. Okay, let's just take your high carb day, run it 2 days in a row. Boom,
Yeah.
amazing look. Okay, you know what? Instead of a linear load, we're gonna run a double high carb day into the show. What is that? That's essentially a backload, but I don't do any sort of depleting in the beginning of the week. They would
Yeah.
just be on a
They're
normal
already
diet.
depleted. They're
Yeah,
already depleted. So it's like,
they would be on their normal diet. If not, calories raised, if we're able to reverse diet them into the show, right? If they're ready early. And then we just blast them with carbs, right? A little
yeah.
double high carb day, protein lowered, veggies pulled out, water the same, sodium, sometimes a little bit higher one day out, and definitely super high on show day. Yeah, consistent water, because for people that don't know, for every 1 gram of carbohydrates, you need 3 to 4 grams of water for it to store as glycogen in the muscle.
Yeah.
So if you have a coach that cuts water, I hate to break it to you, but that's how to not be full 101.
Yeah. I think the worst thing to do is cutting sodium, which I think most coaches don't do nowadays, at least, right?
You got to
You'll run
grind it
into
up.
like a few. Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you want that fullness, guys, if you want to get that skin splitting pump when you're pumping up backstage, I have a super formula that I give clients right before they pump up, and let's just say it involves a lot of sodium. So you need
Yeah.
that sodium.
Veins popping, everything.
Yep, got to have it. You want to run them through a front load, and how many clients have you used that with? Because I'm sure it's only in more rare cases, right? I've used
Yeah.
it before, but what about you?
Only one. And
Okay.
that's because in that case, we didn't really have a lot of data to go over. So you know how you mentioned through your high days during prep, you typically gain data of the client on how they typically assimilate the carbohydrates, and how much their tolerance is. For this client, it was Philip. For you guys who know who Philip is, OCB Pro, but for him, it pretty much made it so that we could test his tolerance at the beginning of the week, deplete back down, and then we know where that kind of layer is, so that we top off a little bit more towards the end of the week. So it's basically a load towards the beginning of the week, and versus like a linear load where you hold the look, you have a few days in between to just wash off and then just top up to kind of hold the look into show day, if that makes sense. So it gives you data that you probably don't already have from the prep. Maybe you don't have as much time to give a refeed, but it gives you that and allows you to manage the look according to that going into your show. And also, it's also used for individuals who, I haven't ran into an individual personally that holds a lot of fluid from a load, but like, for example, I'm sure you know about that example with Dante, AJ's client, where he's holding like a bunch of fluid. Cases like that where you just introduce like a little bit of carbohydrates to the individual, they will just hold the fluid automatically. Like this is like even like just 100 gram of carb increase, they'll just hold fluid. So the goal within this is just to load them at the beginning of the week and then drop off, that load, and they'll still retain a lot of fullness going into the show. So it's for the individual that typically doesn't lose a lot of fullness, but holds a lot of fluid interstitially, like sub-Q, over the kind of muscle cell layer, and it typically dry out as the week comes by.
Yeah, I've ran a front load, dude. I think I've ran a front load once or twice. I think once last year. I remember all the peaks from my guys recently, from the last like couple months or so, but I don't really remember from last year when I was putting guys on stage. I think I've run it once or twice, and it's a great tool for some
Yeah.
people too. And if you can see to as a coach when someone looks the best after a refeed, whether it's 1 days after or 2 days after, I mean, maybe even rare cases like the same day, depending on the carb sources, depending on their fats. But most people are going to simulate glycogen and restore muscle fullness the next day, if not 2 days later. And so sometimes I'll have clients that they look their best 2 days after. So you can take that into account when it comes time to peak them and stuff like that. And so, yeah, guys that look their best, maybe 3 or 4 days later, and maybe they, gain too much weight from a refeed and they are a little bit spilled. But then, you bring them back to a normal baseline diet. Like 3 days later, sometimes they'll look their best, right? It's like 3 days post refeed, right? Some of that, like water retention from spilling them has come off, and then they just like have their best look 3 days 4 days after a refeed. That's why it's so important to ask for photos 1 day 2 days 3 days after a big refeed during prep, right?
I always ask for photos. Yeah, especially like when you're putting someone through like a diet break, something like that. You want to see how they assimilate the glycogen. I noticed that with people that have really poor digestion, that's the cases where it's like 72 hours they look their best typically. It's always yeah.
So yeah, front load, bit more rare case. You did a great job explaining that, Andrew. Thank you. Yeah, we've both used it once, I think. Yeah, I think just once. So yeah, that's cool that you've won it as well. And you said that's your guy that's pro, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the guy that turned pro last year. Yeah.
Yeah, you collect the data and do what's best for the athlete, man. There's no copy paste in here.
You recently had an athlete turn pro too, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Ago.
May 2nd, 4 weeks ago. Yeah, he OCB pro and classic. So that was super, super cool.
Linear load?
Double high carb day.
Okay, so backload.
Backload. Cool. Yeah, backload. Yeah. Everything else consistent. Well, so he was gonna do. Here's where this play. I couldn't linear load him because he was going to compete 3 times back to back, weekend and weekend. So we were gonna go. Yeah. Oh, don't worry. I had the game plan down though. So unfortunately we didn't because he ran into some medical issues, just reacting to the tan and like food intolerance stuff. So bad allergy issues where he wasn't sleeping. When you aren't sleeping, he pulled a plug. But when you aren't sleeping, you wake up watery, right? It's just literally not sleeping through the night ruins everything. So it's okay. We'll be back and we're gonna kill it and go for this IFBB pro card. But first show, warm-up show was the OCB show, pro card, smash.
Yeah.
And then that next weekend, we're gonna go to the NPC natural show in Vegas. Place first or second there. I know we would have. And then I already had my flight booked to Pittsburgh for the Pittsburgh Pro Natural Qualifier. So we're going to go smash the Vegas show, hopefully win the overall there. But you just have to place first or second in your class, and then you qualify for Pittsburgh. And then we're going to go run up Pittsburgh. He's 19 years old. So we weren't expecting to win the IFBB Pro card or anything like that at Pittsburgh, but we wanted to go make a statement and make a name for ourselves, and see what we could do against the big boys at Pittsburgh, against the top tier natties. So that was our 3-show season.
You say that's coming up, or
no? That's what we were supposed to do.
Oh yeah, supposed to. Yeah.
We pulled the plug 2 days before the Vegas show.
You said you had the flight booked, or did you get a refund?
No.
Oh, you didn't? Oh man.
It was non-refundable. No, it was non-refundable. So we had like the hotel booked in Vegas. We had the flight booked to Pittsburgh for a sick, 3 weeks back to back of competing, just
Yeah.
getting after it. It was perfect. They lined up, obviously it's not the most ideal thing, but they lined up perfectly, and we were going to make a run. But unfortunately, we only did 1 out of 3. But hey, you can't be
Yeah.
mad about a pro card, and it's a
Yeah, you
huge
cannot.
accomplishment.
Yeah.
It's a huge accomplishment these days to win the OCB pro card. Each year, it's just getting more and more competitive with social media,
Yeah.
man. Like 5 years ago, people used to trash on the OCB, say they handed out to pro cards to random guys on the street. Now, dude, I go to OCB shows and there's guys that are
It's
big,
crazy. Yeah.
to be on like big if they were on gear, man. Like there's guys here, like the
Seriously, yeah.
men's physique winner at my client's show, man. Dude, he could win the overall at an untested NPC local show all day.
Yeah.
So
Goes to show, man, natural bodybuilding is getting competitive. So the standard and the floor is getting higher.
yep, gotta get bigger and bigger, man, to
Sure.
hang, dude. Gotta get
Yeah.
bigger and bigger. These young kids, man, they're getting insane because they start so
Yeah.
young with social media. Gyms are
Yeah.
more packed than ever. It's a good thing though. So it's awesome to be able to teach people the experience as a coach, and show them why time matters, and
Yeah.
show them what mentality is required to be a bodybuilder, towards those last couple weeks where hunger is high, food is low, cardio is high sometimes, and steps are
Yeah.
high. So it's an awesome experience to go through a prep as a coach as well, not just an athlete. So it's fun to be in the off season and focus more on coaching than my own training.
It feels like you're in prep, right?
Yeah, it feels like you're in prep. I mean, it's a team effort, man. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but once like, you hit like 10 weeks out and you start checking in with guys multiple times a week, you get pretty close with them. So I get pretty close with a lot of my clients, especially in the later stages of prep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's fun. So what else have you done with guys, right? Besides a linear load, back load, and front load. So I have one that I've done besides that, but I'll let you go first. I know, have you ever done, where you didn't peak them at all? Run me through that.
Yes, absolutely. So in cases where guys don't come in where we want them to be, because I know we post like all our guys on social media that do like really well, but social media is just for like the highlights. There's guys who do come in like not at their best, unfortunately, because maybe time, environment, and maybe they just want to run through like their first prep and not give it 100%. If they're too fat, the best thing to do is not run any peak at all, because the more fat that you have, more of that fluid will bleed over into those fat layers, right? So that's the case where I wouldn't do any peak at all. I would just stick to baseline diet. Maybe keep like veg and protein down on your show day itself, but that's pretty much how I would go about things. I've had to do that probably already twice at this point, just due to like individuals not running a good like off season with myself and just having enough time, which like you said is the most important thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, back when I first started coaching, and, I would like, say yes to coaching anyone for a show. If they had a short time frame, I still got them shredded, but I would let them know. I was like, hey man, you're going to have to suffer when it comes to the cardio. So I have pushed some people to the limits when it comes to cardio. And it's simply just because if they want proper stage level conditioning with the short time frame they gave me, you're going to have to suffer on the cardio to get stage lean. So I will always make it my task to bring someone in stage lean. And, back like last year, right, when I would take guys on with guys that didn't have proper timelines, I'd be like, this is not enough time for a prep, but if there's nothing else that works for you, and you are willing to do the cardio and suffer on the calories required to get stage lean, hey, be my guest. I will get you there as a coach. I will get you to a package that you'll be proud of, a lights out, conditioning package. But now, it's more than just pushing someone to the limit. Now it's like, hey, no, I'm not prepping you with this short a timeline,
Yeah.
because I want everyone to come in lights out. And coming in lights out requires a proper timeline where you're not driving fatigue and systematic inflammation so high with all the cardio you have to do. So now I'm just like, no, like you're doing a later show, or I'm not coaching you for a
Exactly.
show
Yeah.
So
Yeah. The two cases where I had to put someone through that is where just life happened and they were on a timeline that's like no other show in the future could be possible. I'm just like, okay, it is what it is. We're just not going to be able to peak you for your show. We're just going to run normal baseline diet.
But yeah, no, guys, if you want the best results, have a proper timeline. Like, yeah, you can get shredded fast, you can get stage lean, but you know, that amount of cardio, you know, the low calories, you're probably going to lose some training performance in the gym and not have the best package that you could have with fullness, with conditioning, with, you know, fatigue management. If you've got to do high cardio, low calories due to, you know, not giving your coach enough time, not giving prep enough time. Let's see. So you've done it where you just do no peak. I've never had to do that with anybody. However, I have done kind of my own thing that I've developed, right? The peak natty method. This is my favorite way, right? I have, thankfully, you know, like I said, especially this year, right? The last few months of amazing athletes I've put on stage, they've all given me plenty of time. And so what I do is I get them stage lean early, right? Especially the OCB where fullness is required, where you don't have to push to that next level where I would push someone if they were going to do WNBF or maybe NPC natural.
Yeah.
I'll get them ready like 2 or 3 weeks early. Boom. Cardio done. Boom. Just steps, right? For a whole week, right? Like, dude, up to like, I had a guy where he was just doing steps from 4 weeks out, right? So I'll cut cardio first and then run an entire week, collect the data of what happens when they're on no cardio, just their step count, and then their normal diet, right?
Yeah.
Typically, they'll lose more weight or their weight will stay the same. Then I will start reverse dieting them into the show. I'll bump up their training day and rest day calories and just continue as such with their weekly refeed. As soon as someone gets to like 10% body fat, typically I'm always running one high day a week with them. Or if not earlier, right? If, you know, we're doing a long prep and they're with me like year round or something like that. And so, yeah, they'll run their bumped up training day and rest day diet with their weekly refeed, right? Say that's, you know, like 3 weeks to 2.5 weeks out, right? And then once 2 weeks out hits, we will shift to, you know, maybe lower steps or maybe an even higher training day and rest day diet, right? Essentially reverse dieting into the show. And then anywhere from 7 to 10 days out, we will start a linear load. Boom, 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 boom. And then sometimes I will make that last Thursday and Friday kind of replicate their refeed high carb days and blast them with even, I guess it's kind of still a linear load, but blast them with like even more carbs, right? On that Thursday and Friday. It's with like a kind of reverse diet, linear load, backload hybrid thing. But that only works when someone is ready super, super early. They're continuing to lose weight after you pull off cardio. And
that'll be mostly like fluid shifts, correct? Like just a drop in fatigue.
Fatigue comes off.
Yeah.
All any type of like extra cellular fluid that they're holding in their edema. You know, stress based will come off and they'll drop some more weight. You know, maybe digestion is better too when they're less
definitely,
out.
man. Yeah.
And so when someone's really peeled though, like the more peeled someone is, the more carbs it's going to take to fill them out. And I low key like purposely spill people and give them a lot of carbs for these OCB shows where fullness wins. I'm telling you guys, in these OCB shows, fullness wins every time. I swear sometimes it's like the judges don't even care about conditioning. So I will always go for that bursting full look, even if maybe a little less lines are lost in their quads and hamstrings.
You'll always spill it in certain places over others. Like some places might stay dry and lean and full, but if you really want the fullest look, it will always usually compromise somewhere else. Like maybe you'll get a little bit more blurring in the glutes, but if the trade-off to like a very bursting full back is there, it's like the back's going to make up most of the physique versus like just some more blur in the glutes, right?
Yeah, and that 7 to 10 days too, like and that linear load where I'm increasing carbs, like I don't want you guys to think like, dude, their calories are going from like 2,200 to 4,000. No, it's not like that. Because, you know, carbs are only 4 calories per gram, but also like I'll drop protein down, right, to make room for more carbohydrates. So we have this bigger bump in carbohydrates, but overall calories, it's really not that much more since protein's down. Typically just keep fat the same. And then it can be that like backload, you know, high carb day blast that I'm talking about Thursday, Friday after the linear load. It's like, you know, literally the same amount of calories, because I will literally cut protein in half, pull out all veg. And so it doesn't really end up being that many calories, but it might be a lot more carbs. But those carbs are required to fill someone out when they're, bone dry peeled, and they're lights out. So
Have you ever
that's
seen
how.
someone run keto into a show?
No, I haven't. That would be horrible, I
Yeah, that
think,
would be
right?
terrible.
Unless they're a really
Yeah.
weird, I don't know, genetics are
Hey,
weird, man.
some coaches do that, man.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
the more peeled you are, man, the more carbs you need to fill out. And I will always go for that filled out full look in the OCB, which is where most of my clients compete, either there or NPC natural. NPC natural, conditioning is way more prioritized. So I take a little different approach. But yeah, man, fullness and that like, it's like you're walking around with just the best pump of your life. I'm telling you, that wins OCB shows. It's like whoever they see, whoever their eye is drawn to first, that's just who they pick. They don't even go by like symmetrical stuff. They don't compare like the lines in their legs and, overall conditioning. They just like pick who's the biggest, fullest, and has somewhat good posing.
Yeah. Have you ever had to run a GDA for somebody in prep or like in peak week setting?
A GDA?
Like a glucose disposal agent?
Oh yeah. I will. I'll run it. I'll run it with guys on like high carb days. Like I have a client that I used it in the off season because he got up to, I used berberine with like all his high carb meals in the off season because he got up to like 4,800, maybe 5,200 calories. And then I just would tell him to, because he obviously still had it. I would tell him to use it.
Did you say 5,000 calories?
Yeah, as a 200-pound natural, man.
Was he 5 meals, 6 meals, 4 meals?
6 meals, I think.
Okay, yeah, it's gonna be very hard to digest that on 4 meals. Yeah,
just lots of rice and cream of rice, and then I had him on berberine, of course. But literally, he was losing weight on like 4,800, so I had to bump his training days up. It's crazy. Well, he had never cut before, right? Think about it like this, guys. When you've been essentially bulking all your life and you've never done a prep, you're just driving your maintenance calories higher and higher and higher and higher. And that's oftentimes your first prep, at least in my experience, my first prep. A lot of guys' first prep, they're able to diet on the most calories because they come off where their maintenance is super, super high, like my client. So yeah, his maintenance was super, super high. Definitely had a GDA in on that bulk, and then kept it in for high carb days. But I've never specifically told someone to go buy it for peak week. What about you?
So with individuals who are wanting to do a prep, like I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, like individuals who have not the best environments and are typically like super stressed, low sleep, they're doing the best they can. And, we typically monitor frequency and volume so they can still have a high level of training, but typically insulin sensitivity will still downregulate regardless because they're super stressed all the time. They're getting poor sleep. That won't change. So I'll typically have like a GDA in potentially throughout the prep, not even just peak week, man. Yeah. Because peak week, I'll just ask them to take time off of work to de-stress and just be more insulin sensitive, maybe on top of the GDA itself.
Even when they're on like lower carb days, you still put it in with carb meals?
Yeah, because the stress of their jobs and then like poor sleep, like even though they deplete, because we know that, when you go through fat loss, you're going to be more insulin sensitive. But even through fat loss, like, their blood glucose is still through the roof, man, just because of lifestyle factors. So those are cases where I'd still keep in a GDA regardless. And you should see their off seasons even,
Yeah, I use a GDA on myself when my carbs get high, and then of course for any cheat meals. But I guess most of my guys are younger. They get to like focus on the bodybuilding. They're pretty stress free.
Yeah, I mean, you're younger, your genetics, dude. You could digest anything, man.
Like my guys in prep right now, I'm trying to like they like all they're doing is just bodybuilding. Maybe they have a job that they work a little bit, but yeah, they're all like 19, 20. So they're pretty stress free, and
the best kind of environment for bodybuilding, seriously.
Yeah, and they're not on a ton of carbs anyway, because they're all like 150, 160 pounds. I don't really have any big boys on stage over like, I think my heaviest guy on stage was like 175 maybe.
75.
Yeah, my client that went pro, I'm trying to think how much he was on stage.
How tall is he?
5'9". Here, I'll pull him up right now.
5'9", 175. He's a
Yeah.
pretty big boy, man.
Oh, he's got a huge upper body. I think
Yeah.
he was 165, 175. I just have too many clients now. I gotta have my everything pulled up, on the computer.
Yeah.
Here, let me pull him up. Let me see how. I think it was 165. Sorry.
Yeah, 175 at 5'9" would be like IFBB pro card definitely level, man.
Okay, yeah, he was like 165 all time low.
Yeah, that's still impressive. Yeah,
I just pulled him up. Yeah, so he's 5'9", 165 all time low. So he was like my heaviest guy on stage. So it's like they're not eating a ton of carbs anyway, versus like me to carb up, right? I'm like 194, 195 on stage. I have to eat a lot more than someone that's 160, 150 pounds. And so I've never thought to. Plus, like obviously they're not working full time in the hospital. Like I said, my hospital guy's a lifestyle client.
Yeah.
So
I have
it might be
someone right now
ordering in for him then, actually.
I have someone right. Yeah, maybe if I mean, you could get him to track his blood glucose maybe for like a week fast and just see where he's at, or if he has like lab work done, A1C is a good way to track that too. But I have a guy who's 200 plus pounds right now. He's definitely going to be like a heavyweight probably when he competes, but he's dieting off of like probably 180 carb. Yeah, man, 180 carb at 200 plus pounds. He's like 5'11", and that's just because of environmental factors, medical related. Yeah. So it's like uncontrollables like that, man. Like you just kind of got to pivot in the right direction for what that client needs. And he's training like 3 times a week. He wants 4, wants 5. I'm like, no, you can't have 4 or 5 because, your quality is going to degrade in your training.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I've recently started, guys that just need to manage their fatigue more, whether they're in a stressed out environment or they're super strong, right? The stronger you are, the more you need to recover, right? Someone that's, moving 500 pounds on the RDL needs more recovery and fatigue management than a beginner lifter that's doing, 135 RDL. So me, myself, and some of my stronger guys, we have started to shift down to 4 days a week of training. Just because of like recovery, dude. Recovery is everything. And so not only in the gym does recovery play a part, right? Recovering from your sessions in order to be fresh for the next one, but also your environmental, where you're at. So I will definitely have to, keep that in mind for guys that live in more of a stressed environment than, these younger guys that literally get to wake up and just plan their whole day around the gym and they're pretty stress-free.
Yeah, especially as you retain those clients and they get older, man, like they're going to start to have those shifts in environment where you're just going to need to shift things around with them too.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. What else? Is there any other thing you'll put in for peak week besides, a GDA sometimes?
I don't ever like to do natural diuretics.
Okay.
Unless, I'm pushing someone to the limit in terms of fullness, just in case we have to. But normally, man, I like to just drop carbs down for like meal 1 and just see how they look, and just monitoring that show day look is the most important thing. If you overspill somebody, you could potentially just run into like a 0 carb day entirely and just taper off fluid. I don't think you should taper off fluid like completely. But I think that most spillovers can be cleaned up as long as nothing goes wrong during peak week, like someone doesn't get sleep at all, like you mentioned. Yeah, nothing else that I could really think of.
Okay. I've used natural diuretics in rare cases with men's physique guys. I don't use it with anyone but men's physique guys, right? Men's physique, the core is very, very important. And having dry peeled abs. And so the guys that don't give me a proper timeline, the ones that I was talking about where I push them to the limits, right? Say they didn't get completely fat free, I will tap into natural diuretics just to get that crispy, conditioned look required for the core for men's physique. But that's the only time I use it in rare cases. And now that I literally say no to short preps, hopefully I won't be using them anymore. But I know AJ will use them sometimes. Peak Max he talks about, but usually I'll use the EvoGen Super Dry in rare cases, like I said. I think my first coach for my OCB show used diuretics with me, and they worked pretty good for me.
Did
That
you
show,
feel
but
flat?
no, I was
No, you
full
feel
at the
good.
house. Yeah.
Were you
Uh,
spilled in the morning, or like did they like was it like a burgers and fries situation, pancakes type of thing?
yeah, it was like a
Yeah,
muffins type of thing. Yeah, he
yeah,
wanted me to get Five Guys, and then there was no Five Guys close, and then I got a muffin. It was one of those type of Hail Mary things, and it worked out for me, thankfully.
yeah,
But yeah, he was that first coach was a terrible coach.
yeah.
For sure.
Did you place with him at all, or like did anything good come out of that?
Yeah, we won the pro card.
Oh, you won the pro card.
Yeah, I won
But
the
you
pro card
still,
with
dude,
him.
that was the same thing with me. But yeah,
Mhm.
I'm not as ruthless as you saying like he's a terrible coach. I don't want to say
Oh,
that.
dude, I will say he's a terrible coach. Like, not, like obviously we won. Like it, like his, burger and fry and diuretics plan worked, which it can with talented athletes. And the Hail Mary worked, I guess.
Yeah.
But also there was like I just had proper stage conditioning and I practiced my posing a ton. I was the best poser on stage. But the reason I can, say he was horrible with, obviously getting good results is simply because of the workout program he gave me, bro. He gave me the most ridiculous high volume, two top sets, two back offs for like 10 exercises, these like 2 hour workouts that just made my strength plummet, made me lose size, just the most high volume, bro. I'm talking like 50 pull-ups for the warm-up for my pull day. I'm talking 100 reps of lateral raises, 5 sets of 20 on push days and pull days, no time for recovery. And then I didn't do this one, but he would put in the 100 lunges after every leg day.
Oh
That's
God,
the only
man.
one I wouldn't do. But I, for real, like obviously I was not a coach then back at the time. I was like just getting into bodybuilding. I was paying him, so I followed that workout plan, man. And I would do those 100 reps of lateral raises in these high volume, 2 sets of like 8 to 10, and then 2 sets of 12 to 15 for every exercise. And all I did was just lose my strength week after week and then get smaller. So I
Was it
can
like
say he's a terrible coach
FST7?
from them.
Was there a name for that? Was it FST7?
No, it was, I don't know what he gave me. He just sent me that
It was
over WhatsApp. It wasn't even like on a Google sheet. It wasn't even on a Google Doc. It was the most unprofessional coaching service ever. And so I can definitely say he's a terrible coach.
yeah, don't you think it's pretty crazy how far training's come
Yeah.
from a bodybuilding perspective, like over the years?
So crazy, man. So
Yeah.
crazy. And people will like claim, hey, like, dude, look at all the big bodybuilders, like the ones that we see on social media. They do high volume stuff, and they do sets of 20, 30, and they're huge. But it's like, dog, like
I mean,
they've
it's like
got
intensity and how you're executing kind of trades off, you know.
yeah,
I
and it's
think
like
both can work, but it's like it's how you're moving at the end of the day. Like Jay
and it's
Cutler
like
won't push his sets all the way through, right? And he can handle
yeah,
more
and it's
volume.
like we're naturals, man. Like we don't have,
Yeah.
3,000 nanograms per deciliter of testosterone to
3,000 is
recover.
great.
Yeah, recover and being able to build muscle like some of these guys on growth hormone and all those type of things. Like we have to manage our fatigue and make sure we're recovering properly and focus on progressions and strength. So
I
yeah,
think
man.
that even if you're enhanced, like you still need those in place. But
Yeah,
it's just
you
a
still
lot of
should.
guys who have great genetics, regardless.
They don't. Yeah, and then they say it worked for them, so they're not even open to looking at
Yeah.
the science or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's all good though.
Yeah.
Obviously we have our athletes to impact in a positive way and get them right. So I'm trying to think anything else fun during peak week. Peak week's pretty self-explanatory. There's like nothing
It
magic
is.
about it. You just go with your approach and load. I guess if you want to run them through what you'll typically do when it comes to fluids, because I think at least when I first started coaching, one of the things I always, like was wondering and was struggling to grasp and what's it called would like it's like kind of the reason why a lot of peaking is the reason why a lot of people want to coach. Like you always hear like,
Yes.
yeah, dude, I could get myself shredded, I could diet myself for the show, but like I need help peaking, so they hire a coach for their show, right? But one thing a lot of people don't know about peaking is how to go about controlling water and fluids and maybe like the sodium potassium ratios when it comes to show day and getting that dry look. So how do you go about fluids on show day to get that dry look?
Well, to start off, I think that the dry look also comes with a very flat look. So, I mean, you could definitely maintain dry, but at the same time, if you want to get the fullest you possibly can, some of that spillover will happen in certain areas where you won't be as dry. But the most important thing to know for peak week with fluid is that the main thing that will hold fluid is carbs and sodium. So as long as you keep fluid high and pretty stable, you will just piss out any extra fluid as long as your carbohydrates are at a certain level, sodium too. So, I mean, the amount of people I've actually came across that I've peaked that think that we're going to actually drop fluid going into the show is crazy, man. I always keep fluid high. And actually, I taper fluid on show day. That's the only day where I keep fluid either front loaded or I just try to taper it off going to stage to keep the midsection pretty cinched. And fluid is just used to toggle body weight up or down and fullness up or down based off of the carbohydrates you give them on show day. But I'd say just keep fluid high throughout peak week. And then the real tapering comes on show day, pretty much.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was talking about, show day. But also, no, that's a good thing to say, because a lot of people think that you're going to water load. You know, they see that stuff on social media going 3 gallons, 2 gallons, 1 gallon. And then cutting water like the day before or something like that. Yeah, no, I do the same.
I've actually never seen those things, but I've never seen like a water.
Still do it, bro. Believe it or not, coaches still do it, man. They do it. They call it water loading. Treat it like a freaking UFC fight where you need to lose a bunch of water weight. You know, as if water isn't good, like as if your muscles aren't 75% water. So, but what I was gonna say is, yes, I keep water the same throughout peak week. And then the main thing I was getting at for fluid control is show day, like you talked about. I'll rehydrate them in the morning, you know, make sure they get some sodium, potassium in. And then depending on the individual, maybe a liter of water, maybe 2 liters of water, if they're a little bit bigger. And then you know, about 2 hours before the show even starts, I'll be like, okay, water's done, just sips as needed. And then they'll have that full look, and then it just holds them there while keeping, you know, the waist cinched and the core dry. And then, you know, typically we'll backload a little bit more water for getting the nastiest pump possible with, you know, the little pump formula and the secret sauce pre-pump up. So yeah,
sodium.
That's what I do as well.
Maybe a non-stim.
Sodium, non-stim, maybe a little glycerol, maybe some pump pills.
Yeah.
The peak Natty concoction. But it's just simple, man. Just hydrate on show day. Get your sodium, potassium in, you know, play it safe. There's no reason for risking anything. And then, you know, taper off water when your coach tells you to do. And pump up backstage and get the best pump of your life.
Biggest takeaway, I think, regardless of like the load protocol, is just keeping super chill, super stress-free, because that stress will impact your ability to, you know, what kind of load you're going to use, all those factors.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of my questions on my check-in form is, you know, rate your stress 1 through 10. And if so, like if it's high, you know, describe it. And like I find myself saying all the time in check-in videos, stay stress-free, you know, keep that cortisol low, keeping the stress-free. And I tell them, you know, all the time. And now, you know, it reinforces into them. I have a lot of clients that, you know, are pretty low on the stress bar, right? They say cortisol free, or they'll maybe say, you know, had one cortisol spike throughout the week, and makes me happy, you know, keeping them stress free. But yeah, dude, I know people that have come to me and told me like, dude, their coach made them cut water one day out, and they're like they're so thirsty they couldn't sleep. Well, also some nerves, but they couldn't sleep the night before show day. So yeah,
you know what's crazy is that sometimes it works, right? So that just goes to show there's like an over reliance on peak week, in my opinion. Yes, it matters, but it works for some people who are just good.
Get shredded, find your look, and get on stage, pump up, pose good. Posing's important too. Yeah. Do you teach posing to your guys?
I will occasionally. I had a mentorship from Jacob Pomeroy before my season last year, because I was thinking about becoming a posing coach maybe, but I never did, just because honestly, man, like that's not where my heart lies. Like I really, really enjoy coaching. Yeah. So I mean, I typically just outsource my posing, and I'll give like a few like pointers here and there with posing because I still remember this stuff. It was a 3-month mentorship, like 4. So obviously, I'm going to retain a lot of the information for men's physique, bodybuilding, and classic too. So my guys get a little bit of that too within their
Right.
weekly check-ins.
Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, I Josh Mata, the men's physique guy, he taught me how
I
to
think so. Yeah.
the manifest board shorts guy. He's always posting men's physique stuff.
Is he from
He's
the U.S.?
yeah.
Yes.
He's from Arizona.
Okay.
He teaches a ton of IFBB pros and like Olympians now posing. He's a
Mhm.
top level guy. He's known for his like men's physique posing, but he knows how to do classic, and he taught me how to pose and how to coach posing as well. So I
Awesome.
enjoy posing coaching
Is there
too.
a Peak Natty posing coming out soon? Like a Peak Natty posing page?
No, I wouldn't make a separate page, but yeah, I do have some coaches that send their clients to me, and I'll
Oh
do
wow.
like
Okay.
I'll be a posing coach just for that client, and then I include posing with my coaching for all my guys. So it's pretty
Yeah.
fun for me to design routines and turn someone from not
Oh, like
knowing.
whole routines too.
Yeah, dude, I
Oh
do
wow.
everything for my clients
Nice.
from routines to teaching them their posing, and everything. And then yeah, now I've started to get some coaches to send over their clients over to, so I do like just their posing. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I just do everything I can, honestly. It's so fun.
Yeah. It is. It really is. Yeah.
I think before we hop off, I think the last question I have for you is just because I've never done it. I've never used alcohol with a client once. And I would obviously I'm open to anything. I'm always open to learning more as a coach, but yeah, like before, I would always be like, dude, I would never use alcohol. I would never give them vodka the night before. Run me through like a situation where you might give a client a vodka the night before as a coach, or when
The
you have.
only time is for stress. I would never use it as a diuretic because there's other things that you can use in place that won't be as detrimental as alcohol. But the biggest thing, like I mentioned, is just stress. So if you have a client that's just stressing out, which I'm not sure if you ever have, but someone that's just super like nervous and shaky and they probably won't be able to sleep, that's a situation that calls for something that's going to put them to sleep because the trade-off is huge, right? You need good sleep, you need to be chill. If you can't get those things, you can't have a proper peak load, proper package. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess while we're on the subject of peak week too, I guess the only other thing that I can think of that I do, that might be cool to share is typically pretty much every single guy, I give them, a black coffee show day morning, right, as part of their
Yeah.
fluids. Caffeine and coffee is a great mild natural diuretic for
Yeah.
getting nice and crispy. So it can also promote bowel movements, right? We want the
Yeah.
GI as empty as possible. So I'll typically always go with that unless like, I don't know, they're allergic to coffee or get a bad response from coffee
Yeah.
on show day. So that's the only other thing I do really.
Yeah. I'll have coffee in too, especially if they've had it in all of like prep, peak week. Pulling that out, it's just another variable that's just missing, right? So like you
Mhm.
mentioned, consistency with variables, supplements, everything is pretty much it's like the big player, right? You add more things in. I've heard of coaches like pulling caffeine out. I'm just like, that's more work for you if you know what you're doing. But like, if you're like manipulating all these things, there's just more room to mess up the look, right?
Yeah, 100%. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on, sharing some insight into what you're doing with your athletes. Obviously you're a great coach. You got other pros under you as well. And yeah, I definitely look forward to getting a session in with you soon.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me on.